Hello, welcome back to Sapling Tarot. My name is Imogen and we're back with another episode of The Cards Were Dealt, my series about tarot and neurodivergence. Today we're chatting to Ty of Ty Constellation here on YouTube. This was a really great chat. We were dealing with some serious time zone differences, so I may look/sound a little bit groggy, but let's get into the interview. Okay, so would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Ty. I use all pronouns, but they, them kind of gets the point across the easiest. My internet presence, I guess, or what will I say? My channel name is Ty Constellation because it's a houseplant pun, and I'm a pretty big fan of houseplants. I'm a tarot and oracle reader and a witch and a Hellenic polytheist, leaning more kind of eclectic rather than reconstructionist. So my channel is mostly about those kind of topics, like tarot and witchcraft related things, oftentimes Greek myth, through usually the lens of being queer, being disabled, and being neurodivergent.
Gorgeous. Yeah, I find your channel really exciting, and it's like all of my special interests all like smashed into one place, and it's just thrilling.
Oh, thank you.
So in terms of neurodivergence, how do you identify? Do you have any labels that you like? It's totally fine if not, but just in case you feel
Yeah,
it.
so I don't mind the word neurodivergent to begin with. Like, that is probably what I use most often, just because I find it to be the most kind of general and, again, getting the point across quickest without having to go into too much detail. But also I'm autistic and I have ADHD, and that's the way that I say both of those things. I know there's a little bit of debate there as to, having autism versus being autistic, but I've just always said that I am autistic and it feels like the right way to me. So that's what I prefer. And then also in terms of, I have physical disabilities and I refer to myself as being disabled, which again, some people prefer person with a disability or having a disability. And for myself, I just think it's such an integral part of how I live that I'm disabled. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I fall into the same. I can never remember what it's called. Is it identity first language? So I'm autistic. I'm disabled. Like I'm still trying to figure out a way of saying that for ADHD. Like
Right.
I'm AD, so I tend to stick to use like ADHD. So I'm ADHD. The grammar pedant in me doesn't love it, but I'm like, yeah, that's kind of close
I
enough.
often write ADHD, like if I'm typing things out, because it makes more sense. But I feel like if I say it, sometimes people might not recognize exactly what I'm saying and just think, are you saying that in a slightly odd way? But
Yeah,
like, hopefully it'll catch on a little bit.
yeah, absolutely.
On the topic of labels, actually, something else that I did write down is that I am queer, and I like to say that I'm queer, and that's the kind of the one that I lead with, like whether it's in queer spaces or otherwise. Because I mean, within that sort of umbrella, there's like I'm non-binary and trans and pansexual is probably the closest orientation, and polyamorous, and I don't even know if that counts under that umbrella. So I just kind of I like queer as the label as well.
So your experience of neurodivergence, what does it kind of mean to you in terms of like as an identity and like how it shapes your life?
Yeah, it's pretty central to everything for me, I think. Like, I guess you could say in hindsight, like I have shown signs of being neurodivergent for forever. So I guess, yeah, it's affected my life forever, my entire life, like since growing up, the way that I sort of learned to associate with other people, interact with other people, it's had an impact, I guess you could say, for as long as I can remember. Things like employment, I always found that working for someone else was really, really difficult for me. So the type of employment where I kind of thrived the most was where I was working for myself or scheduling my own hours or working from home or just doing something more flexibly. And like relationships as well, I think it's really affected that, mostly for the positive, actually. All of my best kind of romantic relationships have been with other autistic people. And so like there's, I think, an element of understanding each other and interacting with each other that is just in some way, I don't want to say more natural, but like easier or more straightforward with other autistic people than perhaps with holistic people. Like just direct communication and stuff like that. Oftentimes I'm very interested in like the relationships space, I guess, because I'm also training to be a counselor. So one of the types of counseling I'm interested in doing is relationships. And it's kind of fascinating to me that one of the biggest issues you kind of read about in literature and stuff like that is communication. Whereas an autistic person, it feels very, very normal to me to be a very like straightforward communicator, to just sort of say when I have a problem with something, or to express gratitude as well. Like on the other hand, in either direction, I think just, there's something very affirming about being in a relationship with other autistic people. So I think being neurodivergent affects every part of my life.
Yeah, because I think they call that like double empathy, don't they? So you've got like an autistic person communicating with an autistic person versus an holistic or, neurotypical person communicating with a neurotypical person. They're both kind of fine. It's when you try and do the cross like cross compatibility thing of like tech, so iOS to Android, being the thing that people bring up for autistic people a lot. Androids, yeah, we're robots. I know. I've been told that the way that I speak sounds like AI. We're going into another generation of me being told I sound like a robot. It's fine. But no, I get what you mean about the communication thing. I think also a lot of us have, trauma, small t or big T, around being misunderstood or misinterpreted. And so when we're in like adult relationships, we're like making a concerted effort to not be that and to really have our communication be as honest and straightforward as possible, and to not have any of that bullshit that we have had to deal with in the workplace and at school and family setups and all of that kind of stuff, where there's all of that secret other language that we're not privy to. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I see a lot of that in certainly what I have aspired to in relationships. Whether that has happened or not, it's maybe a little bit different, but like it's no, I relate to that a lot in the clear communication, and then learning about or seeing even modelled in TV and film and books and stuff about kind of cis het relationships, and you're just like, you could just talk to each other. I mean, it would be a much shorter film if you just had a straightforward conversation with each other, but there'd be none of this, whatever this is, it's making me feel uncomfortable.
I have that thought so often. It's like that, I don't know, secondhand kind of embarrassment, or like, oh, you could fix this, you could resolve this. Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Like that idea of, like someone who gets a growing resentment for someone else because of something that they're doing, but without like saying, just straightforward saying it to them. That's like my nightmare. Like, no,
I'm
do not
so
sign me up.
I'm so terrified of people doing that because it's been modelled to me through media, and I'm like, I'm sure people don't do it, but also I'm kind of anxious that they do, and so I like check in with people to the point where it's like probably irritating, where I'm just like, you're not like fostering some decades-long resentment to me about this thing that, if we were in a rom-com, that's what you'd be doing. Yeah, just checking, just asking questions.
It's honestly so good to just like, I don't know, to have a partner who you can just be like, I need to be alone right now. And they just, okay. And they fuck off.
Yeah, and that's not offensive.
Or the inverse. Or, like, yeah, being able to express yourself so clearly and have someone who understands like why I need to be in the dark right now. Okay, that's fine. Like, things like that without having to fully explain. So good.
Yeah. And it's like I could explain, but that would also kind of defeat the objective of me stating my needs. We have that in my house. It's the kind of, well done for stating your needs. It's just that, which, to an outside perspective, it would be like, what kind of, again, robotic language? But it's like, congrats. We've been conditioned to not do that. So every time you do it, yes, I will do the thing, and also gold star saying the thing.
Yeah.
Well done. That's your entire life's worth of conditioning to do that. To say, fuck off. Kindly, fuck off. I need space. Or, if you really want to do something, you can make me a cup of tea or whatever, but otherwise don't speak to me.
Right,
With
exactly.
love.
Even I hate how you load the dishwasher. Let me do it. Like, just stuff like that.
That is.
I have really specific things I need done this way. And if you're going to live with me, you will understand that. And they do. And it's great.
Yeah. Oh, the dream. The dream, the dream. And, people, by people, kind of neuronormative, holistic people are just like kind of autistic people and all of their social deficits. I'm just like, babe, you wouldn't believe the fulfilling relationships we can have because we can talk to each other. So which came first, your tarot or your kind of understanding or claiming of your neurodivergence?
So it's funny, they both were kind of simultaneous twice. So in about 2017, that was around when I started reading tarot, and also when I got diagnosed with ADHD and autism. But then, like a long, long time ago, I have always, as I said, I guess like I was a weird kid. I was very clearly autistic, etc. But I also have always done divination. So they've been kind of like this the whole time, just at different stages of my life. So as a kid, like I started fortune telling when I was really, really little, because that was very normal to me in my household, because I'm Greek, and so a lot of my relatives were reading coffee cups and stuff like that, and so that was just sort of like a thing you do when people come over for coffee. So that was really normal. I learned how to throw bones because my mum had this set of like sheep bones that used for throwing lots, and so I used to like make up my little system of this means yes and this means no and this means future and all that sort of stuff. And I learned how to read playing cards when I was like 9 or 10. I got my first oracle deck when I was like 9 or 10. And so yeah, it's kind of just been simultaneous for both. I was that weird fortune kid that like everyone kind of thought was awkward, but they still wanted to see what I had to say about like reading their little fortunes. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I suppose I came to it when I was a young teenager or something, and again, it's that thing. It's fucking weird, but also, can you read my cards? Odd little kid, poke it with a stick, but also, you can do something for me. That's amazing that you got into bones and stuff at that age. That's very cool. And then having the flexibility, I suppose, to develop your own system is something that a lot of people go straight into kind of book learning something. And so to be able to kind of figure that out yourself that's a cool thing to have to pull into any future practice that you have.
Yeah, I think I'm very lucky in that regard, because I think there's a certain step, like if you come to all this kind of stuff in, I don't know, late teens or 20s or 30s or later in life, there's a mindset, like a major mindset shift, I feel like, to be able to be like, magic is real, like synchronicities are real, or whatever is the thing that you think operates tarot. Whereas I didn't have to do the jump necessarily, because I was just like, you can see how many kids someone's going to have in the grinds of their coffee, or, like
Obviously.
that was just like normal to me. Whatever, that's fine. Yeah, it was like I had a little head start almost. But I did realize yesterday when I was in this live chat event with like a whole bunch of awesome tarot creators, a lot of them have been like reading 30 or 40 years reading tarot. And so I was just kind of like, wow, like I had a head start in some ways, but I'm pretty behind in other ways. So it's interesting to think like, I don't know, just that I've been doing, I suppose, divination a long time, but tarot a short time in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting distinction. And I think that the thing about like, a lot of people in this kind of internet space talk about using tarot for like inner child work. And I think a lot of inner child work is about kind of reclaiming connection to that kind of magic that you can just sort of immediately be like, oh yeah, it's magic when you're a kid. That's not some grand statement or kind of staking your colours to a mast of a spiritual belief or something. It's just like, yeah, it's magic, And I suppose that's the closest thing I have to like my sort of links to spirituality and stuff is much more akin to that kind of childlike, just is what it is. It is magic. It is synchronicity. It doesn't feel like a huge statement or like a massive mindset shift. It was kind of that kind of recovering of the magic it's not even like it doesn't even feel as like hard fast as like a belief. It's just like an acknowledgement of just like, yeah, that's what it is. And like my thing with tarot has always been like, maybe it's bollocks, or astrology, maybe it's bollocks. I don't care. Like it doesn't really matter to me because it does the thing. And so it's like, does it matter if it's real or not? Like what even is real? And then you get into tricky waters and hard conversations of like, what does it even mean to be real?
I think there's a lot of people who are very like anti taking on that stance though. And I think it comes from sort of both directions as well. There's that kind of the only things outside of what we can physically experience must be religious God related, or there's absolutely nothing outside of what we can view and, I don't know, observe and track and experience, and very like atheistic. And in both of those, I have friends in both camps really, and I find it's quite often like there's a real hesitance to be like there's unexplained things or there's anything that doesn't fit, in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like I don't know many people in my actual life in terms of the people that I interact with regularly, semi-regularly in terms of, I don't know many people in the kind of the more religious, anything you can't explain must be God kind of, or, whatever version of that is. I know a lot of people in the other camp. There's a like hardcore atheistic, but sort of to that point of, I think the biggest adjustment for me was realising how essentially like white supremacist all of that is, and the kind of the scientific method and how all of that has happened kind of at the expense of so many different sorts of people, and to be that arrogantly atheist is actually inherently very like a tool of the structures that I don't like. So it feels bizarre to be so, all that matters is what can be proven in the lab, but then also it's like, but who's allowed in the lab? And what do we count as real insight? And like all of that. So it's like, that was like what shattered all of that for me. I was just like, oh no, I don't want to be that. And then like, I don't have so much of I grew up around religion, but in that way that I think a lot of people in Britain do, of where it's like church on Sunday, but not like. But then I went to Catholic school and I was like, oh, I understand.
How is that?
Really fun. As an autistic person who has always been fascinated with religion, I've always found it, because, the ritual of it all, the patterns, everything, it's fascinating. And I've always really respected it. And that went down really badly. Because it was things like, well, I respect the fact that you believe in the body and blood of Christ, so I'm not going to take the wafer or drink the wine, because if you actually believe that that's the thing, then why would you want me to? But then that was being difficult, and that was refused, that was being non-compliant, that was being all
being
of that
referred
stuff.
to difficult.
Yeah, and you're just like, no, I'm being respectful. It's more respectful, and what a learning moment. It's more respectful to do the thing and not believe in it than it is to not believe in it and so therefore not, and to leave your sacred thing alone. And I remember the same with confession. Like, I don't believe in sin. I remember like in the Ash Wednesday thing where they put the kind of the smut on your forehead, and like everyone else's would fall off within seconds, and I was just walking around with a big black mark on my head for the rest of the day and it wouldn't fucking come off. And I was just like, well,
Worst.
I reckon he used different stuff for me just to mark me out as the fucking heathen. Like, even my science teacher, who I think quite liked me, found out that I didn't really celebrate Christmas and just called me a fucking pagan. It was in Ireland, but like, so
They know.
pagan.
They know what Christmas is.
Yeah, but like, and I wasn't even at that point. It was just like my family didn't really, because by the time I was at school in Ireland, I was spending Christmas in England with like my mum's family, and it was just like, oh no, it wasn't even. We hadn't even stopped celebrating Christmas at that point. It's just that we had curry at Christmas because my mum refused to, like, single parent. She refused to be the person that was just like in the kitchen all the time and missing out on all of the nice stuff. So it was like something you could pre-cook and then just like heat up on the day. And I told him this, ask me a simple question, I'll give you a simple answer. What are you having for Christmas? Chicken curry. And it was just like, point at the weird kid, point at the weird kid. Fucking pagan. So how many pagans are eating curry? Like, is that pagan? I don't think you know what these words mean. But yeah, Catholic school was, like, it was fine, but also it was an interesting lesson, that one, about it is more respectful to just go through the motions than to actually hold the thing in any regard and say, no, I won't participate.
I guess long term, like, there's some hope that the habit will just stick. Like, if you're allowed to not participate, you might get comfortable not participating, but if you get forced to, maybe you'll just get used to it, something like that.
Also, I think that it kind of highlighted, well, yeah, like most of the people here don't believe, but they're doing it anyway because it's what you do, because we're in Ireland and we're Catholics. Like, whether you believe in it or not is kind of irrelevant. And that was like just wild to me. And it's something that I keep in mind quite often. I think seeing people going through the motions of things without stopping to question why.
It seems like Catholicism is one of those religions that has a fairly high like proportion of people who are, like they're there because their family goes there or that kind of thing, like where it's not exactly, 100% believe in it. Like there's a lot of Catholics who disagree with stuff that the Vatican does or says, but it's like, well, then why are you a Catholic? And they're just like, I don't know, just am. Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
I remember the comedian Dara Brian talking about it as being a really sticky religion. Like it's really hard to, like, you can be an atheist, but you're also still a Catholic because you were brought up a Catholic. Like you can't really get rid of it. And I remember thinking like that's like such a visceral word to use of just like you can't, if you still have like Catholic family and stuff, then it doesn't matter if you've not been to church in decades and like you're a staunch atheist or something. At the end of the day, you're still a Catholic. It's fucking terrifying.
It's a bit intimidating, yeah.
Very, very confused by why that is desirable, because I suppose I don't, I think maybe it's the autism, maybe it's the way I was raised, but like I don't see the merit in just because that's the way things have always been done. That's how we should continue to do things. And
I reckon that's autistic. I reckon that's a big that's a autism that should be on the test.
Yeah.
Like, do you think
opinions on
just keeping
tradition.
stuff the same is worthwhile? Not really. No. Okay, you're probably autistic.
Yeah, like, do you think that just because this is how it's always been done is a good enough reason to do anything? No.
Right.
If someone can give me a good reason why that's the way it's always been done, and, good reason being defined by my metrics, arrogant son of a bitch that I am, like that, but no, not just because you say so, or, it's the whole authority thing in there as well. It was so much fun to have in a classroom or in a workplace. So when you were saying about like making your own schedule and working for yourself and stuff, I was like, yeah, that's a biggie. So you came to divination through kind of family and just having a go at it. How did you come to tarot then?
As I said, I got oracle cards fairly early in my journey. So I had like a couple of different oracle card decks and I had been using those for a while. Like I got the first one in, I think it would have been 2001 or something, and I still have that deck and I still use it. But I came to tarot because I had kind of like thought about it, seen it around on and off. But in around 2017, my partner at the time had some of their ex's stuff still. And one of the things was this like kit that had a standard RWS and like a line work version that you're supposed to color in yourself. So I started like coloring in the line work one, and then I started learning what the cards were, and I never finished coloring it in. And I also got rid of that deck eventually because I was a bit like, I don't know if I really want to hang on to this.
Yeah.
X times X is, yeah. But yeah, that's how I started. And then shortly after that, I got a deck, the 8 Coins Tattoo Tarot, because I used to be a tattoo artist. And so I like saw this deck and thought, wow, that's like artwork that I really relate to. And when I got that deck, that started me to really understand and find more, comfort in learning tarot.
Yeah, and more kind of personal meanings, I think. Like that's often the wisdom about what's the best first tarot deck is the one that you kind of connect with. And I think if you can layer in another interest, I think that's often the thing that motivates us to make the connections and things. And like that deck wouldn't work for everyone, but that's kind of the point, is that it's like a little bit more specific. And I think that's
like
good.
The 8 of Pentacles in that deck is one that in the description in the guidebook, the person talks about relating it to their tattoo apprenticeship. And that made me like really like click what that card is. There's like examples like that where when it's something that's a bit personal to you, I just think it makes it, a little bit more intuitive to understand what each card means.
Yeah, definitely. Also, the idea that it was in your partner's ex's belongings, like that's the queerest way of getting into tarot ever.
That's so
it's my
true.
ex's thing, and I don't know why it's in my hands, but it is. It's in my house, so it's mine there. Like someone somewhere in the long chain of relationships has all my Lego. Like, it's out there somewhere in the queer community of Bristol. So it's like, but yeah, it's a tarot deck that's you know, some people have them like handed down through their family. You basically had it handed down through your family as well.
Yeah.
So do you think your neurodivergence affects how you approach tarot?
Yes, I think so. So number one is like autistic special interest. Once I became interested in it, there was this real, like combination of, I don't know if it's like, it's sometimes hard to draw the lines, I think, between what counts as like an autism thing and an ADHD thing, but there was a beautiful balance of novelty, which like falls a bit more ADHD, and then also learning a system, which falls a little bit autism. It's just like it's kind of the perfect hobby for a person with this particular, I don't know, brain configuration. So I know that like it's a cliche and usually negative to say things like it's a superpower or whatever like that, but in some ways I think it has made it easier to learn specifics or to stick to learning that kind of thing, because I think otherwise it is kind of hard if you think about it, like 78 different things to either memorize or understand or however you want to approach that. So yeah, in some ways I think having that like hyper focus almost really made it easier to latch onto. And then the other thing is I think it also influences deck choices a little bit. Like the fact that I have so many tarot decks allows me to switch between them and allows me to go on that kind of like, I'm interested in this at the moment and go off in this direction. And then, oh, this theme is catching my eye today, and just have that like that constant novelty and freshness.
Well, that's just made something in my own life crystallize, and kind of some clarity there of like, yeah, that tracks a lot of that. Actually, that's part of how it's been like a sustained interest, is that, yeah, you've got the autism of like it's the system and the long held special interest, but also there is that element of, well, you've just cracked something wide open in my life.
That's something that has made a lot of sense for me. As someone told me that fairly early on when I got diagnosed with ADHD, is that one of the main like motivators for people with ADHD is novelty. And I think sometimes like the word novelty, just like the word attention, actually, like both of them get a bit of a bad rap. Like you shouldn't be seeking that. But I think it's just fairly natural for some of us to want more or less novelty or attention or whatever. And so if you need novelty and you need to have, different decks or different, I don't know, ways that you're using them, or different spreads, different shuffles, different whatever to mix it up and make it more fun for you, like that's how I see it, at least, that novelty is like a major motivator and a major sort of incentive.
No, that's such an interesting way of framing it, because I think like in my own life, kind of, because we tend to cluster, it's very much like the queer community. We cluster, and so like basically everyone that I spend time with is neurodivergent in some way, shape, or form, because but it's like the relative things of like, compared to the people in my life who are also ADHD or ADHD or something, my need for novelty is much lower than theirs. And so to me, I don't have that so much. But then as soon as you said that, I was just like, oh, I do. I suppose I have kind of a handle on it in that way of, I know how to spark it in myself, maybe a bit better than they do, that are the more kind of like almost kind of adrenaline seeking novelty, sort of extreme sport type people.
Because I think that's also what sort of comes to mind, is people who are doing constantly like spontaneous things, and that's not really me either. I'm not like making snap decisions to go out and go somewhere or do something crazy or like whatever. But I think another way that it kind of shows up for me day to day is just in like how I schedule my day, in that I find like I much prefer to say, okay, every day I'm going to be doing my physio exercises and washing my dishes and whatever other things are on the list, but in whatever order I feel like. Yeah. So that I can just, what do I feel like doing next? What do I feel like doing now? And I find that so much more compatible with however my brain is wanting to do stuff, than trying to be like, first we do this every day, then we do that, then we do that, because that just immediately makes me want to be like, no, we don't tell me what to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the ADHD and the autism kind of warring off against each other. I think right. Like that, it really does feel so often like kind of two dogs just snapping at each other all the time. And it's, yeah, that exact thing of half of me desires, or, depending on how you view these things, like, but it feels like kind of half of me wants the routine, and the other half of me is just like, throw it all away, do what you want. And it's just like, oh no, but we do need to brush our teeth at some point. It's always the thing that falls down the cracks. But it's, yeah, absolutely the idea of we can do it, but we'll do it in a different order. And that is different, again, from the people that I live with. It's just like, well, do you not just, take your meds after you've brushed your teeth or something? And it's like, no, because if I don't do things the same every day, then my brain starts fighting me. And it's, yeah, like I've been taking the same medication for like 5 or 6 years, and it's still by the seat of my pants every single day if I remember to take it. Nothing is ever truly autopilot. I left the house without socks and a water bottle the other day, and I was like, water bottle I can understand. Socks? I'm nearly 30. How did I leave the house without socks on? It was like halfway to where I was going, and I was like, I don't have fucking socks on. How did this happen? How am I supposed to live the rest of my day? I was like tarot reading at an event, and I was just like, I have to be able to pay attention to what people are saying when I'm not wearing socks.
What did you do?
Just kind of manage. Yeah.
Find socks on the way?
Yeah, no, I got some tights at like the train station. It's like the most kind of, nothing is ever truly autopilot. When you have a brain like this, like everything has to be a conscious decision, and it's fucking exhausting.
So many like lists and charts and stuff like that. Automate as much as possible.
Yeah, and people are like, oh, have you tried like getting one of those apps? And I'm like, babe, I have all the apps. All the people are like, oh, sometimes I have to put a reminder on my phone. You should see my notifications. But you can't have too many, because then the PDA kicks in. And you're
You just
like,
start like ignoring all of them.
yeah, like, oh, I'll just throw my phone in the sea. That's fine. Great. Navigating that line is, it's so much fun. It's a full-time job. No wonder most of us are either self-employed or not employed at all, because this is, and then you put like other disability stuff on top of it. There are not enough hours in the day.
There is no job that would allow me to, like, no job with another employer that's not myself, that would allow me to do the stuff I need to do, that would allow me the flexibility I need, that would allow me to just like stay lying down all day some days when I need to do that.
Do you think that your neurodivergence affects how you think tarot works?
Yeah, I do. The main reason is because I think it affects your, I don't want to say ability to believe, maybe like propensity to believe, because when you're neurodivergent, I think one of the most common experiences that we all have, like maybe as kids or maybe our entire lives, is being disbelieved a lot. Like if a lot of the time I'm having experiences that other people don't believe are true, like if I'm having to say like, no, like a tag on my clothing actually is, I can't ignore it, or, like, no, that fluorescent light is something that I really cannot ignore, and other people are like, whatever, that doesn't make any sense. That, I think, means it's easier for me to believe or be open to believing stuff that maybe I didn't think has, a complete explanation. I don't know if I've necessarily articulated that well, but...
No, I mean, well, you've articulated it well enough that I'm like, I can feel my brain going like, fuck yeah. And also to be able to participate in something that other people don't believe in. If you're so used to yeah, my kind of classic sort of explanation of autism is that light is too bright, I can't hear you. And it's, yeah, like the kind of things of being not believed, but then to pursue something that people don't believe in, you're just like, well, what's different? And so to experience things and to kind of be able to do that kind of suspension of disbelief. And also, like, so many of us are quite into like fantasy stuff, like books and films, and D&D is almost entirely played by autistic people, I reckon, and it's all of that kind of stuff that, like, it's our wheelhouse, really. I think the kind of the living on that precipice of what is believable.
I think that's the point. Yeah, and then also like the thing with something that's like unusual, like a lot of those pursuits and hobbies, like the fantasy stuff and D&D, and then my mind instantly went to MTG, Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Just like, these are hobbies that, like, among the people who like them, there's like a full, like, intensive, community type of thing. But among like other people, it's a little bit derided sometimes. And so then, like, I think if you've had that experience a lot of times with other of your, like, interests, this is just another thing that other people think isn't worth anything, but to you, you're like, well, I'm interested in it, so fuck you, I'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the amazing thing now of, the internet, all of its faults aside, is that if you share an interest, it's not just like you and your village anymore, with like a whole village of people that think that you're ridiculous, and it's this one kind of old dusty book you found in the library about this thing or something. Like, now you can take that dusty book and then you can go online and you can go, fuck me, there's like millions of people that, like Magic the Gathering or this niche fantasy series that I love that was like self-published by someone 20 years ago, but there's, Reddit forums all about the thing and people making YouTube deep dives about it. And the same for tarot, and tarot of all flavors, whether you're kind of light, fluffy, kind of vibrations tarot, or, if you're kind of, channeling ancestors tarot, or if you're purely, it's all science and psychology tarot, like whatever flavor you align with, there's a whole bunch of people you can talk to about it, and you can just kind of info dump at each other, and it's delightful.
It is.
What a time to be alive.
One of the best things about like especially YouTube is that like interactivity and then specificity of like how specific you can go. Like you're looking at particular topics or particular symbolism, particular whatever is just taking your interest. It's like there's a good chance there's other people who've already been thinking about it and talking about it, and you can have somewhere to like bounce your ideas off and field things.
Yeah. Also the way of communicating being, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to monologue about this thing for 45 minutes and then I'm going to post it online. And if you want to talk to me, then either you can do small written comments or you can do a 45-minute monologue in response. And it's like, wow, that is apparently the communication style I've been looking for all along.
And it's something we don't really get in any other like form of communication.
It's like socially seen as a little bit iffy to do that, but it's encouraged now on like financially, depending at what point you get to, it's encouraged and therefore like rewarded to to be video essays and all that kind of stuff. Like it's like what a little kind of bubble to have found ourselves in. It's very cool. I know that there's lots of issues with YouTube specifically as a platform and the internet and all of that kind of stuff, but the good bits are pretty fucking good, because also we can do this
Definitely.
on literal other sides of the planet from each other, and we can have a shared experience, and it will never not be magic to me.
Right. I've learned so much from like people who've had so many different experiences and then having tarot to kind of tie it together. Like I think probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, I probably didn't have people in my life or people that I knew who were, I would say, like in elder age ranges. I don't know what is the best like term way to say that, but like people who are significantly older than me. I didn't know that many people who were significantly older than me. And I feel like I've benefited quite a lot from like a lot of the people who've, they've been reading cards 20, 30, 40 years and seeing not just that, but like other fields of knowledge that people have that they incorporate into what they're doing is just so fascinating. And there's so much to learn. Like there's especially this one channel who I watch a lot who incorporates like herbalism and plants quite a lot into her content. And it's just like overwhelming and like amazing how much you can learn from like someone else who's just, they've been growing plants for 30, 40, 50 years. And it's like, wow, there's so much knowledge that you can tap into just for free. There's people who are wanting to share like what they know and express themselves. And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, and like the amount of people in the community who are like retired, and that's why they came to YouTube. And like I think so many people have an image of anyone that ever creates content online as being like, I don't know, in their early 20s or something, but like no, we run the full spectrum of human experiences and ages and lifestyles and all sorts of things, and it's just amazing. Like I love the people who film in their cozy little room and they obviously have like all the time in the world, and they're probably just like smoking a joint off camera and they're just so chill and so kind of settled in like, this is how I've been for 50 years, not in a not like what I was saying before about kind of because that's how it's always been, but just like, this is who I am, and I just wanted to share the things that I find interesting. My grandchildren or whatever showed me how to use my phone, and I don't edit. I film it, I chuck it up. I don't really write description boxes. I love it. It's good.
I
No
love that.
search engine optimization. It's just,
In
yeah.
a way, that's a little bit like representation too, right? Like seeing that you could, I have no better, again, phrase for this. You can be an old weirdo. Like I'm a weirdo now and I can continue my weirdo hobbies into like decades ahead. Like it's, I feel like when you can actually like see, it's the same as when you see like older queer people, older trans people, like having the example of someone who's still just like doing their thing and living their life in a similar way to how you might see yourself is really cool.
Yeah, and like, not to be too dark, but like that we can survive and we can get, because like, there are so many reasons why we don't have an awful lot of queer elders. And so kind of expanding our definitions of queer to include like the weird, so like the other definition of queer, I think it expands our world in terms of the possibilities for us, and that our lives don't always have to be kind of cut short or limited or whatever because of gestures broadly. But like it's possible, and if anything, it looks fucking great to be that age.
I mean, like I think witchy spaces kind of have that as well to a degree of like venerating the crone.
Yeah.
And I know I don't love the mother maiden crone thing as well, but like there's still something kind of nice about communities that like don't dismiss or diminish elders. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of crone or whatever, but also kind of, I think, people that talk about kind of ancestors and stuff. I mean, certainly I know in my, like the specific culture in which I've been brought up, that's not a thing. It's, old people are sort of, I mean, old people are a pain in the ass, but like that's kind of culturally, it's sort of a bit like, how boring to go and, talk to your grandparents, or, it's something you have to do. And it's not a thing that is prized. Really, old people aren't particularly valued, other than as a voting population for Conservative governments. Like, so I think being in witchy spaces and queer spaces, in fairness, has helped me kind of reframe that for other people in general, and that kind of, the value of lived experience and wisdom, and, not that all old people are wise, but it's, but yeah, like you say, that kind of the respect of older people and people who've been doing things for longer. And I think there's something really beautiful about older people who are new coming into something, and that people are prepared to admit that and celebrate it and stuff. Like, I know so many people in my family feel like unless you got into something as like a child or a teenager, like that was your opportunity to start something new. And that is baffling to me. We were talking about novelty. Like, I fucking love a hobby. But yeah, so seeing people kind of modelling that you can be in your 60s or 70s and have your thing that you've been doing for ages, but also bringing in new information and, adapting and changing. And you're like, see, it is possible. Look, they're on the internet.
It's like bridging a bit of a gap as well, because I think like I also had a bit of the impression that like people of that demographic wouldn't be interested in what I have to say, but it's like not at all the case. There's a lot of people who have like said that they've learned things about sort of like queer history or, what it's like to be neurodivergent or things like that from having watched some of my videos when those are not topics that they were like familiar with. And so it's like this really nice exchange.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like it kind of harks back to maybe at one point how society was, or maybe that's kind of an idealized view of things, but it's very cool that we have this kind of access to people wanting to talk about their interests, and it's so autism friendly.
Yes, definitely.
People being like, kind of, neurodivergence, this is not language I had, but that sounds like it fits me. And it's like, you're on YouTube, probably.
Right. There are definitely
diagnostic
people
criteria.
Do you care about something specific enough to make an entire YouTube channel about it? Tick.
Yeah, and you don't care who's watching, you're just here to talk about it like every day. Are your grandchildren bored of you talking about that one specific thing that you love? You too, could be. Amazing. So, have you found any challenges in relating to traditional or more mainstream tarot interpretation? So things like archetypes or like collective symbolism. So like when people have told you like, or reading a book or something, it's just like, well, this thing represents this, and you're like, does it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like I'm definitely of that, I don't know, opinion that the definitions are flexible. Like if you're reading tarot, why are you doing that? Are you doing that for you? Are you doing that for, your client, etc.? Or are you doing that to be exactly the same as a particular source says that it is? Like I think probably that's not most people's goal. So why is that held as such a important thing a lot of the time? So the definitions or the sort of meanings or interpretations that I have the most difficulty with are often really the gender based or gender focused ones, because as a non-binary person and a trans person, like a lot of the time that's just not the way I think or the way that I prefer to think. I don't like to look at things as having a masculine and a feminine. And so, yeah, I've had to sort of rewrite or redefine some of those things for myself. One that comes to mind recently, because I like sort of recently did the videos on it, was the sun and the moon cards, how they're often defined as being sort of like masculine and feminine. And then it just so happens that one is everything that's great and awesome, and one can mean unpredictability and craziness. Who would have said? Like, yeah, so things like that, I think it's like a good idea to challenge them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're not alone in that. I mean, even I think people that I've spoken to who aren't non-binary or trans, it's just like the weird specificity. So like particularly when you get to like the court cards of like, like this is a man with dark hair and dark eyes, and you're just like, okay, but they're all white.
Yeah.
So you're already slashing. And then it's like three, well, I don't know. The pages are kind of ambiguous, but like they arguably like, I don't know, so two men, one woman, one in the courts. And then you're like kind of, okay, so that's an interesting breakdown of the people if you're reading them as literal people. So like it's already just falling apart. So you really have to be making your own. Or, following in the kind of the wisdom of people like, I don't know, Charlie Clare Burgess or Christy C. Rode, who made the Next World Tarot, and people who've already kind of torn up the rule book and kind of written something. So, if you're not in a position to totally be making your own things, there are people who have written great books about these things. But yeah, I think feeling your own way through those sorts of things, because I just get caught on the literal thing of being like, don't challenge me to a literal fight because I'll out literal you.
I honestly never even learned like those definitions of the court cards where it's like, this is a blonde man who's older, this is a brunette woman who's like, it just goes in one ear and out the other. I cannot remember that shit.
No, it's so baffling as a concept for me and the way that my brain works and the way that my life is. It wouldn't make sense for that to be the readings. I'm sure it works for some people, but yeah, not my thing. Do you think that your neurodivergence affects your intuition or your kind of concept of your intuition?
I think so. I think, like in a scientific sense, there's things that have been sort of associated with autism that might just be helpful. Things like pattern recognition. I think like if you have 9, 11, however many cards you have like laid out and they're all there at once, I think there's something that goes on that kind of can help you be like, this is connected. This has the same color. That's kind of pre-thought, has a little bit to do with it. But then another thing is, I think like trusting yourself, because again, that's something that we end up doing as neurodivergent people anyway, because if I say, like, just to use the same example again, the light in here is too bright, other people may not agree with my assessment of that. So I just have to trust that that's correct for me. And for me, it is the case. So if I see a particular interpretation in a reading, I will just say it. And I won't have that point where I'm like, is this the right interpretation? Is this the right thing I'm supposed to be saying? I don't have a kind of self-doubt there a lot of the time. I just have a kind of like, oh, this is what I see. What do you think of that? Because it's kind of like plain speaking, which I think is also a thing that's fairly autism coded. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree that The self-doubt thing. I mean, I suppose with a lot of autistic experiences, I tend to characterize them as being sort of generally just kind of the more extreme. So we're either really, really good at something or really, really bad at something, rather than being kind of somewhere in the kind of the happy medium. And so I'm sure there are some people who are totally debilitated by self-doubt because they've been told all their life that what they're saying is bollocks, and, you know, just to stop making a fuss, and that it didn't do what I think it did for you and for me, which is sort of tip over into, well, I have to believe myself kind of thing. And so, yeah, I see that in terms of I always find that kind of intuitive element of reading really funny, because I kind of clock the processes of, I'm essentially making this up, but I'm just rolling with it. And so, like, even I remember when I had a day of readings where I was essentially just always reading this one card wrong. And so I was on the train back and I was going, fuck me, no, that was that card and that should have been that meaning. And then I was going, am I an intuitive reader now? Was I? I wasn't wrong. I was being intuitive, and I was reading the, you know, the context of the cards. And so it wasn't that if like another tarot reader had overheard me, they'd be like, babe, that's the Seven of Pentacles, you're reading it like it's the Six. But it was like, no, my intuition was guiding me. I wasn't wrong. It was my intuition. And so, making it up as you go along is what I now refer to as my intuition. And I'm sure people would have issue with that, but I like it. It makes me laugh.
I mean, I think it is a bit contentious. Like, there are, people who would be anti, I guess, using this type of method. But I mean, I often rely on just like the visual. Like, I look a lot at who's facing who. If there's people in the cards, I look at, like what direction hands are pointed at. It just depends, like what takes my eye or catches my attention at that time. Because I just figure whatever is coming to you is what's supposed to be happening. It's what's supposed to be, getting across. That's the message. So if what I'm noticing is like, this thing is red, like that's what I'm meant to be noticing.
Yeah, no, I'm very similar, because that's the thing of, like, particularly once you've been studying it for a number of years, you have so much information for each card, and kind of the skill of doing a reading for somebody else is deciding what's relevant. And so, like, each card has, essentially kind of infinite ways that you could read it, and it's figuring out which makes the most sense within the context of that person's question, in the context of the other cards that you've pulled, the day you're all having, like, the environment, whether it's appropriate to be, kind of, and so tell me about your relationship with your mother, like in a 5-minute reading in a busy place. You go, maybe we leave that one for if you decide to do a private reading sometime. But it's I think that's there's so much information kind of stored away, and so whatever it is that sparks to kind of pull the threads out. And so, like, that's red. So what does red mean to you, to me, to culturally? Like, what does that? We could talk for hours on just that one particular thing. And generally speaking, that's not what someone going for a tarot reading is after. Just waxing poetic about that.
Like, I think it's pretty individual too. Like, I am the style of reader where when I'm reading for a person in person or over Zoom or whatever, where we're like talking in real time, I like it to be conversational. I like to do like a lot of back and forth. I think some people think that it should be like significantly one way, that you shouldn't have like any information from the client. You should just have like the message comes to you and it's perfect and you deliver it. And I don't prefer that. And I also don't prefer that as a client. I much rather for someone to lay out cards and say like, oh, it looks like X, Y, and Z. What do you think of that? And I might say, oh, yeah, this, but not so much that. And just have it like evolve a little bit versus kind of sticking very stringently to things.
Yeah, I feel that's how both parties get the most out of it as well. Because like I was saying, you're pulling from a bank of millions of possible interpretations. And so if you've slightly misjudged it and they don't tell you and they just get up and walk away, then like neither of you has really learned anything. But like as a tarot reader, when someone goes, oh yeah, well that makes sense because actually the career I was talking about is actually a creative career, and look, there's a paintbrush on that card and stuff like that. I'm actually, thinking of becoming a painter, or like, thinking of starting to sell my art and stuff, and you go, fuck me. Like that's the, and because you get the positive feedback of, I'm not just making it all up as much as it feels like it. I'm not just talking total bollocks. But also they get that back and forth, and so they can give you more information, so then you can give them more information of going, well, that makes sense, because if such and blah, then these two cards talking to each other with that context, you both get so much more out of it. And so now every time I see that card, I remember the person who was going to become a painter, and I'm just like, fuck me, tarot's great. And it's like you get that, I guess, validation in a way, but also that conversational. I've had so many people just sit down and be like, you're the fortune teller, tell me my fortune. And I'm just like, oh, you prick, but you've given me money.
Yeah.
It's fine, I'll do the thing. But
it's like it's a test, and I hate when there's, I mean, like, I still want to do my best, you know, I'm not rude to people, that kind of thing, but like it's very irritating to have someone come up and just like basically, I don't know, insult the entire thing that you're doing. They're just like, I don't believe in this, haha.
Yeah. Then why did you give me money? What are you doing? Good for you, I guess. You are very big and important and clever. Good job, Guy. Do you have anything that you'd wish someone had told you, either when you were first diagnosed or when you first got into tarot, or both?
Yeah, so in terms of tarot, I think I wish someone had told me, like, go ahead and buy whatever deck you want, like whatever appeals to you in terms of artwork and stuff like that, because I think often there's a lot of either that one superstition about you have to wait for someone to give you a deck, or like just a lot of almost pressure to use one of the kind of most traditional or standard decks, whether it's the RWS or whatever, versus like indie decks or other decks that might connect to you a little bit more on the artwork level. Like, I think it's good to know what was being referred to. Like, most, if you're buying a deck that's RWS based, then you know that it's based on that system. But I think it helps a lot with the learning process if you have something that actually like corresponds to your personal preferences and aesthetics.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like it's funny, I don't think I've ever met online or otherwise someone who actually believes the thing about it has to be gifted to you, but it is a really pervasive one that just kind of sticks around, of people being like, oh, I can't, like, I don't know anyone who reads tarot that believes it, I guess. I know people who don't, and they're just like, oh no, I can't buy a deck. You can't buy your own tarot decks. I'm like, whoops.
You'd all be in a lot of trouble if you can't buy your own tarot
Yeah,
decks.
if you can't buy your own tarot decks, let me not explain the expanse of my collection to you. They certainly were not all given to me as present, but yeah, I think it's a really good piece of advice for anyone, in fairness. And then like getting diagnosed or kind of realizing, I'm trying to not put such an emphasis on diagnosis, because I know that some people are self-diagnosed or, you know, peer-reviewed, and that is just as important in my eyes. So like realizing neurodivergence, what advice would you give?
I think that's a kind of a tricky one to answer, because again, I think I was really lucky in that, like, I already knew so many neurodivergent people and was already close to so many, in that I was already fairly familiar with, like, A, what neurodivergence is of various kinds, and then B, like, how people accommodate it or, I don't know, structure their life around it or live with it. That makes it sound really bad.
No, like, I know what you mean.
But yeah, so I guess like in a way it's not as though like a whole new world kind of like opened up. It's kind of just sort of like, yeah, now I have a paper that says this on it. So I guess like thinking about, maybe the only thing I would say is just that it's okay if particular methods or accommodations or whatever don't work for you. Like, it's okay to try things, trial things. I tried medication for ADHD for a really long time, and I tried different ones and different dosages, and none ended up being right for me. Whereas like it seems like sometimes there's a bit of a like, yay, now you're diagnosed, you can get on medication. And there's, you know, we've swung from one way where we're like, no psych meds at all, to the other way where we're like, good, get on psych meds. But like, it's okay if you do one and then the other and then the other, like repeatedly over your lifetime. I think that would be the thing I'd kind of emphasize.
Yeah, no, I think that is really good advice. No, absolutely. Yeah, because the funny thing, I suppose, with the autism diagnosis is that there isn't the thing, and you can feel kind of the irritation. Or like, I remember that from kind of GPs and stuff, of being like, oh, it's not one of the ones we can treat. It's just like, we can't give you anything for this. It's just like, good luck.
Enjoy.
It's a piece of paper. Have fun. Did you really need it? No, but now you can't move to Australia. Enjoy. Many countries that will just see you as a burden. Delicious. Do you have any resources you recommend for other neurodivergent tarot readers?
Honestly, I don't have any specific ones. I think I would just say, like, use the resources that suit you, because there's so many different ways to either learn to read tarot or to just expand your knowledge or share ideas. And it can be reading books, but it can also be watching videos. It can be listening to podcasts. It can be just doing it, just speaking to people in person. Like, everything counts as a resource almost. So I think don't be too like restricted to whichever ones seem right or, you know, like the most academic or anything like that. I think just use whatever appeals to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, you know, broadly speaking, there's a lot of emphasis put on books and, like, even at that, physical books. So not even ebooks or audiobooks or something, but like physical books, and that's the resource. But no, there are so many different things out there, and they're all like, it's a fucking hobby. Like, that's what I come back to. It's not supposed to be a stick to hit yourself with. It's supposed to be fun. If you're not enjoying it, put it down. It's fine. It's really not the end of the world. Did you have any cards that you feel sum up your experience of neurodivergence, or that kind of come up most often, or that you associate with it?
Yeah, actually, the Seven of Swords is the one, because I actually love that card. And I think like the first thing that comes to mind is that it's very misunderstood, which also, like, you are often when you're a neurodivergent person. You have that experience of being misunderstood or being presumed to have ill intent sometimes, or being presumed to have malice, which is also how this card often like gets read some of the time. Like, a lot of people just view it as like someone acting selfishly or someone acting sneakily or secretively, whereas I see it as all of the sevens are discernment and making the choice of what things to take and accept and what things not to. And that's exactly what the person on that card is doing. They're deciding which of these swords, which of these ideas and things are relevant to them, which again seems very neurodivergent to me, to be like, which of these like things we've been told are the way to act, the way to think, the way to do things are relevant to me. I'll take that, not that one. Like,
Yeah, you
that
can
I
keep
find,
that one.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that. And also, it's often, if people bring animals into a deck, that's also often a fox card, and I think foxes are great.
I love
I'm always like, how can you have a problem with that card if it's got a fox on it? And I reject the sneaky thing. Also, because if you've ever lived anywhere near foxes, they are not sneaky. They are loud as fuck. They let you know when they're around. When they're having a good time, when they're having a bad time, they let you know. But yeah, I think that's a really, I think of it in terms of like the allocation of mental resources as well, and about how that's like a constant struggle. Where to put your focus, where to put your attention, where to kind of spend your spoons in that kind of a chronic illness disability kind of way. And yeah, so I think that's a really good pick. Thank you so much for this. This has been delightful. I will put all of your information and stuff in the description box and stuff, and I will stop recording. And that's it. Thank you so much again to Ty for this really, really delightful conversation. I will put all of their information and links and stuff down below in the description box. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and I hope you're taking really good care of yourself. I will catch you in the next one. Bye.